Hello everyone, KMO here with a few words of explanation about the content of this channel. YouTube gurus stress the importance of having a clearly defined theme for your channel. Not only have I failed to embrace this conventional wisdom, but at least for 2019, I actively reject it. I am here to follow my interests and to develop a communicative style that is specific to the video medium. Even so, maybe this channel has a more narrowly focused theme than I realize. I've made several videos about the ugly online behavior I encounter around the topic of antinatalism. While the thought leaders on this topic focus on the moral duty to avoid unnecessary human suffering, many of the people who comment on antinatalism videos and in discussion forums devoted to the topic seem to be motivated by a visceral hatred of humans, with particular venom reserved for parents. They direct their criticisms at parents in general, but it seems, in a lot of cases, like their anger is specifically directed at their own parents. Another topic I return to often in these videos is my impatience with how a certain segment of my audience waves the banner of peak oil as a thought stopper when it comes to grappling with the societal impact of social media, digital surveillance, and artificial intelligence. No way that will ever be anything but a shiny distraction, they tell me, because the global economy is going to melt down any day now because of peak oil. And if peak oil doesn't do the trick, then something else will. Perhaps a global pandemic will take down technological civilization. If not that, then surely nuclear war, climate catastrophe, meteor strike, coronal mass ejection, or a supervolcanic eruption will bring the curtain down on this shit show of a civilization before artificial intelligence gets far enough to be worth talking about. Yeah, it might. But what if it doesn't? What do the concepts of peak oil collapse and antinatalism have in common? Well, when it comes to accounting for the contents of these videos, they are both worldviews that I tried on, lived in for a time, and ultimately found to have serious flaws and blind spots. There's another worldview that I took seriously for decades and which I no longer find appealing as I once did. I might as well add its fans to the list of people I have alienated with these daily videos. What worldview am I talking about? Libertarianism. As with antinatalism and peak oil, most people don't examine libertarian philosophy in enough depth to even reject it in an intellectually respectable way. They content themselves with hyperbolic stereotypes in place of anything approaching a nuanced understanding. They then dismiss those stereotypes and move on, or they latch on to the most obnoxious or objectionable thing they ever heard a libertarian say, and then insist that this one utterance represents the distilled essence of libertarianism. Believe me, that is absolutely not where I'm coming from on this. I've been voting for libertarian candidates since the 1990s, and I can still find enough common ground with libertarians to pass as one of them when it suits my purposes. So what's my beef with libertarians? In a sense, it's the same beef that I have with the peak oil community. I hear and read things from libertarians that I could have articulated myself over a decade ago, right down to the particular examples and phrases they use to make their points. Phrases come and go, and language evolves when it comes to mainstream topics. When a subculture's language ossifies and then remains static year after year, that's a sign that it doesn't have much contact with the real world. I get that from libertarians, just like I do from peak oil people. In a recent video, I described two conceptions of collapse of industrial civilization, a romantic collapse and a sucky collapse. In the romantic notion of collapse, everything falls apart in short order. You go from worrying about paying your bills to just surviving. In reality, this would totally suck. But the fast collapse appeals to our romantic imaginations because it is fast, undeniable, egalitarian, and, most importantly, clearly not your fault. In other words, the collapse happens over a short enough time frame that we see it as a single event. The power grid worked yesterday, but it doesn't work today. Something big has clearly happened. The fast collapse hits the rich and powerful at the same time it hits the poor and powerless. And while it sucks to have to eat your pets, it's comforting to imagine that Kim Kardashian and Jeff Bezos are in the same boat as you. Most importantly, the rapid collapse of industrial civilization is not your fault. You are a blameless victim of a failed system. The Sucky collapse sucks because it takes decades to play out and affects different classes of people at different times and in different ways. This makes it easy for the people who are still doing well, or possibly even thriving, to comfort themselves by saying that the people who are suffering brought it on themselves with their poor life choices and their lack of drive and personal virtue. Sucks to be you, buddy, but you brought it on yourself. What feels like a collapse to you and people in your circumstances just looks like thousands of individual cases of personal failure to those on the right side of the collapse divide. Industrial civilization isn't collapsing. You're just a loser. Learn to code. Both the peak oil narrative and the libertarian worldview have, in my opinion, failed to alter their message to take the societal effects of ubiquitous mobile computing, the digital economy, social media, and machine learning into account. I have irritated and possibly alienated a portion of my audience by pointing out that the predictions of impending collapse that I got from peak oil people back in the aughts have not come to pass, and that social media and smartphones have had a greater impact over the last decade than peak oil has. And just as the peak oil faithful have failed to incorporate the social and economic fallout from digital technology into their narrative, libertarians too seem content to just repeat the slogans of a worldview that grows further and further out of touch with current events. Corporations use digital technology to substitute for expensive human workers. In the past, automation only threatened the livelihoods of people doing repetitive physical labor. Now, machine learning and other technological developments allow for a growing assortment of cognitive tasks to be automated. Some people use the phrase technological unemployment to describe what's happening, but like the long decline of industrial civilization, the AI job apocalypse doesn't have a clear start or end point. People don't go from having middle-class professions to being permanently unemployable in one step. Rather, they lose a high-profile job with a good salary and benefits and take a less prestigious job in the service sector with less pay and less generous benefits. Eventually, that job also goes away, and they move on to an even crappier job with even lower pay and no benefits. If Google introduced a humanoid robot tomorrow that could do any but the most specialized job task as well as a human and set the price at $10,000 per robot, that would, undeniably, announce the arrival of the AI job apocalypse. Who would hire expensive and flaky humans to do anything when a dependable and undemanding robot will do the same job and cost you a whole lot less? Clearly, expecting anyone to find a way to generate economic activity and participate in the economy under those circumstances would be unreasonable. We would have to rethink our fundamental notions about who deserves what, and how we, as a society, should distribute wealth and benefits, and ensure that everyone has the basic necessities for living. That would be a romantic AI job apocalypse. Instead, we seem to be heading into the sucky AI job apocalypse, where the people on the winning side of the divide can deny that there's even a problem, and that the people who end up living in their cars and working seasonal gigs at Amazon fulfillment centers around the country got there because of their own bad choices. The process is just slow enough, and the environment just noisy enough, that we can continue to put off any systemic restructuring, and I have yet to hear a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian admit that our information economy is destroying whole employment sectors while failing to provide a way for displaced workers to continue to participate and earn a decent living. I'd love to be proven wrong on that score. If you know of libertarian thought leaders who have incorporated the automation of cognitive labor into their worldview, please let me know. I will be particularly interested in statements by libertarians in which they specify the beliefs they used to hold, but which have relinquished or modified in light of technological developments in the last couple of decades. Show me that libertarians aren't trapped in the same sort of ossified belief structures that have locked down the minds of peak oil doomers. Show me that libertarianism can be a dynamic worldview that changes along with the real-world conditions that affect people's lives. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.